Hi everyone, I've had a few questions and queries on the videos and how I actually made the bow and the riser and stuff like that. So I thought I'd make a new video just probably explaining a little bit more in a bit more detail on how I actually did it. It's quite simple, and what I did was basically I just looked around under the house and found some wood that I had lying around, which was actually the old leg of a desk, I think it was, or something along those lines. And what I did was I cut the whole length. The length of the riser is 500mm long from end to end, which gave me enough room for 100mm at each end where the mounting points are for the limbs. So you got 100mm there, 100mm there. Then I measured out the hand grip, which is roughly probably 130, something like that, 130mm from here to here. And then for the cutout, basically I just used the rest. So it's 170, I suppose. It wasn't exactly measured with great accuracy. It was more for what I felt it looked like and needed to be, and how it felt best in your hand, which is actually, when it comes to shaping this handle, takes a lot of sanding and sort of trial and error until you get the handle shaping correct to suit your hand. And everyone's going to have a different hand style and grip that they like and the shape of the grip. Now, to get the angles for the limbs, that's another thing there was no real research or thought put into it, apart from the fact of, on a bow you need a brace height, and I worked on about a 7 to 8 inch brace height, somewhere between there. So your brace height's from here when the string's tightly on the bow to where the string is. So that distance there, when it's strung, I went for roughly 8 inches. So what I did was, after I'd measured up the 100mm from there, I cut this off the certain distance it needed to be from the front face until I got the right angle for the brace height. Now this wood is 500 long, it's 50mm wide across here, 50mm across the front of it, and it's 40mm deep that way. So what I've done is cut somewhere around about 15mm down from the top. So measured my 100mm there, length from the end, and then from the front face I measured in 15mm. Then just basically drew a line and cut it off and sort of sanded it back and finished it until I got a nice flat face for the limbs to bolt to. So as I can say, there wasn't like any textbook angles or anything that I used to make it. I cut those down till I had the right brace height. So I've got the brace height. Then after that, I thought I want the right handle size, and I want the biggest cutout I can get so that you can look through it for aiming. So I thought, alright, I measured up my hand and the size I needed for the hand grip. Then I left as much sort of thickness of the wood and meat here as I could, which I think that's about 20mm there, across that face. From here to here is 20mm or so, to give it the strength so it can still handle the stresses when you pull the bow back, and then basically just drew it out, drew some curves that I wanted, used some old bottle tops or something to get a rough radius of a curve, and grabbed the jigsaw and just hacked it out and then sanded it until it was nice and smooth. Now the handle, I basically grabbed the angle grinder with a sanding flapper disc on it and just grounded away the rough shape of it until I had it where I liked it, and then grabbed the wood files and just kept filing and filing and filing until I had the shape that I wanted, and then just, finished it a bit, made it a bit nicer, sanded it all nice and smooth so feels nice and it's nice to touch. And you'll notice these mountings in the back, and I don't know if I can get a clear view of them, but what I did was I cut little recesses out of the back of it, and I got these bolts. Those things are little round bits of rod sort of thing with a thread through the centre, and they come, if you've ever put together any furniture, chairs, some tables, a lot of those sort of furnitures, flat pack furnitures and stuff you get that you have to put together, you'll see they've got these Allen key bolts and those sort of round elongated nuts that they use to hold it so it can't pull through the wood. So I used those, and I just recessed it in with the chisel so that they sort of sat nice and flush. And you can see that even the bolts are hanging out the back, but so they sit in there. There's a better one where I've cut it out too much, but you can see that sits in there, and so the bolts just go through the limbs and straight into the nuts at the back. I actually put a bit of epoxy glue in there so that they held in place. They didn't fall out every time you wanted to take them off or play with them, and stuck them in, and they work really well, and you can tighten them or loosen them as you need to, and they've never come back off me since. I also put a cheap plastic bow sight, adjustable sight on it, which is just actually double-sided taped onto the side of it, and that helps you a little bit. And also, one of the best things I found to use on them, and you can get them on eBay and places like that, is a little stick-on arrow rests. They're a great little invention, those things, and they make the bow from sort of a backyard toy into something that actually becomes an accurate and good shooting implement. It actually works really well, and they're a couple of dollars for a pack of 3 or something like that, and for the price I recommend that you grab a couple of packets of those and string knocks. You can see the black on the string there. What that is actually fairly heavy gauge Venetian blind cord, and there's nothing spectacular about it. I've just tied it in a loop at either end, and you can see like that, tied it in a loop, and where the knocking point on the string is, I've threaded some black heat shrink tube over it, and then put an actual brass knock on it. And the camera won't focus, but you can see the knock there, and just crimp that on. So yeah, and I find that the heat shrink actually gives you a good strong knock on the arrow, and obviously your knocking point, your little brass knock, stops the arrow sliding up and down. You can set your height, and it works really well. Now the limbs, just for the sake of it, the limbs that are on here now, they're 600mm long from end to end, flattened out, 600mm long, and they're 20 gauge, schedule 20 pipe. I couldn't find schedule 40 here. Actually, I'll tell a lie, I did find schedule 40, but it's either in bright orange electrical conduit or grey, dark grey electrical conduit, and I didn't like the look of it. Plus I also stuck with the Schedule 20 because I think it's probably a bit more snappier, and you don't really need the thickness, I don't think, if you're putting layers inside it. Now they're 600mm long from end to end, and obviously you lose 100mm there on the mounting point, so you've got 100mm there. And then what I did was measure 150mm from the end of the limb, and that's where I made the curve. So those curves are 150mm long. So you've actually got a fairly short limb section. So you've got 100mm, 150mm, and then the rest of your limb makes up 600mm. That was more of a trial and error thing too. You could make them longer, you could make them shorter if you wanted to. It all basically hinged on, like I was talking about, the brace height, and that's how I made the whole bow, was around the brace height and a comfortable length. There was no research into bow making or how to make the perfect size bow for a certain person, or measuring, the right bow length to suit me or anything like that. It was what gave me a good brace height and a good sort of powerful shot without being too stiff. Because obviously the shorter you go, the stiffer the limbs are, the more prone they are to crack, and the more stress you're putting on the riser, which depend on the wood. If you use some really hard wood, probably wouldn't matter. This isn't, I don't know what this wood is, but it's not the hardest of woods, fairly soft. But it seems to hold up fairly well. And admittedly, during winter here, it's been sort of sitting in the cupboard a bit. But as you can see, it still looks like the day I made it. And I could chuck the string on right now and go out and have a shot if I felt like it, and it's ready to rumble. And I've had some great fun in the backyard with this thing. Even to the point of what I was doing at one stage was getting an old milk bottle, like a 2-litre milk bottle, and hanging it on a bit of string out of the tree and letting it just swing around in the breeze and actually shooting the milk bottle. And I found I could put like 3 arrows through the same milk bottle at once. Just as a bit of target practice, and it was dead accurate every time. So once again, I hope that's been helpful and sort of gives you a bit of an idea of how I did it and what the thought process was behind and what I used. And it's something that pretty much anyone with a few little hand tools could make at home, no problems. Thanks for watching, and have fun.